Hey, welcome again. Got a new part. This one's a little bit weird. It's the TRD Aero Stabilizing cover from Toyota Japan. So not really too much purpose. It should clean up airflow. Essentially, it just sits in this little channel here in the car. So the biggest thing here is that it actually stops a lot of the gunk from getting into your trunk, which if you own one of these cars, you'll probably have seen it. And a lot of gunk gets in here, and it just helps smooth out some of that airflow a little bit. So there's a couple steps to actually install this guy. I'm going to run through them and see if we can do this right. There's been some translating and some forum searching going on just to make sure that we're doing this right. But at this point I think we got it down. So let's start. Alright, so the first step here is to just wash off. My car is pretty dirty right now, so I just took some vinegar and a paper towel and washed this down. This is not the full formal cleaning. The first real step here will be to actually pop the trunk open and use this number 300 PAC cleaner. And use the cleaner first. The cleaner is going to be like a real glass cleaner to get this perfect kind of finish on the glass. And then we'll do a primer after that. Once you do the primer, you have to let it sit for about 10 minutes. So if you want to do all of your measuring and adjusting before that, probably a good call, but the cleaner you don't really have to wait for. So let's get these cleaners started and see what we can do here. Alright, so get the PAC 300 cleaner again specifically. Take it out, you got this nice little cloth to apply it, and just all this bottom black area near the window. Try to go one way with it. I started in the middle, which is a bit of a mistake. I'll just go back over. And just get this glass nice and prepped here. Okay. We'll consider that clean. I'll let it sit for a minute. We'll move on to doing the primer after we do some of the measuring and fitting here. And there's a bit of a guide here and some tips, so we'll get right into it. Alright, so this step, try to get a measuring tape or a ruler that you can easily see the millimeters on. This one has millimeters that are pretty visible. Simply line it up with the glass. Look at here and try to figure out the actual gap, so not the edge here, but the underside gap and the window. How many millimeters is that? For me it looks like we're just about 8 millimeters. And so take that in count. So I'm 8 millimeters gap. And in the instructions here, which are in Japanese, we do have a bit of a guide. So if we have an 8 millimeter gap, then we're going to be doing 4 millimeter spacers. And so it comes with 2 millimeter and 1 millimeter spacers. The 2 millimeters, well actually, so the 2 millimeter ones are the bigger, thicker ones, and so just put two together, and that gives us a 4 millimeter spread. Because this is a warm time and this car does exist a lot more in the winter here in Canada, I might actually go ahead and just add an extra millimeter. It will look better with less of a gap, but I don't want it to ever come in contact, so I ended up with a 5 millimeter. And so this is 2, 2, and a 1, 5 millimeters. And we're essentially just going to place these in a gap on the left, the middle, and the other side. So I'll set this up and I'll show you how to do it. Okay, so I just said that I was going to add an extra millimeter because I thought it was necessary, and I just mocked it up and there's quite a bit of a gap. So what we did is we took these blocks, put them right where they need to be, so on each edge. Nice and down there. And if you have a friend, just press on it and take these out. Pop your trunk open. And make sure it clears. So you're going to be looking for clearance here. Of course it's not stuck down on both sides right now, but just make sure it's nice and clear. You don't want this making contact at all. And I think 2 millimeters 4 millimeters for an 8 millimeter gap, as recommended in the guide, is better. I was thinking that 5 might be a smart move, but it looks a little bit weird and it's mildly unnecessary. So I'm going to take this off, and we're actually going to prime it because it needs to sit for 10 minutes. Okay, so pretty confident that it's lined up properly now. So I'm going to take the N200 primer out. I'm using some gloves here because we've got a lot of health and safety warnings on this one. This is a real chemical. Try not to get it too much on your paint either, but simply just take your pad out, get it on your glass, and wiping in one direction. Super hard to do with gloves, unfortunately. I'm just going to do it one more time here. And so this is just priming it to stick properly. I'm just going to flip it over and do one last run here. Alright, so get rid of this in the garbage. If you're doing it with your bare hands, definitely wash your hands at this stage. And we gotta wait 10 minutes for this to prime and lay. So we'll be right back. So what this is once it's primed, you just want to have the best fit possible, because this goes highway speeds, a lot of air going right here. And so what we've done is we've taken each one and just started it using a bit of masking tape to keep it rolled over. And so you have 8 points here that you're going to try to put on. Okay, so we're hitting 10 minutes on our primer now. So I'm going to get our blocks ready. And I am going to try to place the first one here. Let's just get these placed nicely. If you lay the edge ones down, they should stay in place a little bit nicer. Actually, let's just lay this one down too. So now at this point, just use your fingers and try to make sure that you're evenly positioned on the glass itself. Now I'm pretty even on the glass. And so we're going to put a bunch of pressure right here. Let's try to get that first point to stick. And just hold it for a bit, so it's looking for about 50 kilograms of pressure right here. So you can tell it's set nicely. So for just for a second, I'm going to take the blocks out. I'm going to pop this up one more time. And make sure that when our blocks are out of the way, we're not hitting or close to hitting, and we're not. It's good clearance. Now just note that this side's a little bit higher than this side. And you want to press it down. Try to get this side to come in line. So I'm going to put this side down a little bit more than the other side. And look to pressure this side down. Again, just keep some good pressure on it. Try to run outwards with your hands as well to make sure that it's distributed. My blocks are still accurate. So 8 millimeter gap, 4 millimeter block. We cleaned it, we primed it, we pulled all these over so we can get at least a first stick here. And keep it with as much pressure as we can. Let's sit for a second. At this point, it should be safe to remove our blocks and start pulling these out. So these ones are going to be a little bit harder to do with the trunk closed. So we can simply start with the middle top. Just pull this right off. Run your hand with as much pressure as you can outwards. Times here. Let's do the same for the other side on the top. just quickly run your hand as much pressure as you can. So again, my car is pretty dirty right now. Probably better after a wash, but be careful with waxes and things that might interact with that 3M cleaner and adhesive primer. So, feels like we've got a pretty accurate gap on both sides. Pretty accurate to the trunk line. So we've got a nice line going here. At this point, we just have to pull the rest off. Come on this side, do the exact same thing. Oops. Be careful not to try to get any of it stuck under here. As quickly as possible, put your pressure on it. Alright, so we've got it installed. Just quickly to run through the steps, because that was the hardest part for me, is really understanding how to install this thing. So prep it, I just wash it down with some vinegar and a cloth real quick. Then I use the actual 3M cleaner that comes with it. So just use your cleaner first. Try to be in an industrial environment. I'm pretty dusty here, so it wasn't best case scenario. Once you've cleaned it, you'll want to do your measurements. So try to measure from the bottom of your trunk to your window. I was 8 millimeters almost exactly, and so lining up in the chart that's provided, that was a 4 millimeter spacer, which is two 2 millimeter spacers stuck together. Using that, we just got an eye for where it will connect. Took it off. We used the primer, so just wipe the primer on a couple times here, and let it sit for about 10 minutes to let that really sink in and set. And as you're doing that, you want to take this off. Take each of the, because there's technically 4 strips. So there's a strip of adhesive here, strip of adhesive, strip of adhesive, strip of adhesive. And you want to pull both ends of each strip over to the other side and just use some masking tape to tape them down. So that once you're mounting it, you have a little bit of exposure so you can actually get it to stick and mount there. Once you have all those taped on, and it's been 10 minutes since your adhesive primer has been setting, just put it on, use your spacers, middle, sides, try to line it up on the edges exactly as you can to be right in the middle of the car. And at that point, once it's on, use a lot of pressure to push it down. Pull each of those strips out, the top one with the trunk closed, the bottom ones with the trunk open. And again, just work your way from the outside, inside out for each one that you take off, and put as much pressure on as you can. They recommend 50 kilograms of pressure. And at that point, it should be done. Let it sit for maybe 5-10 minutes after you're done. Make sure everything's set up nicely, that you're not going to be immediately splashing water on it or taking it out in the rain or the snow or anything like that, and you should be good. Alright, and so the final product here, as you can see, it smooths out our line, body line quite a bit here. It fills this giant trunk gap, and so the two things that you'll get there is better airflow over the car as you have a pressure zone right here, and you won't get as many leaves and gunk stuck in here. So now when I can clean out my trunk wells, it should actually stay clean. Plus it looks good, and we got the TRD logo on here, which is worth 50 to 100 horsepower depending on who you ask. So it does make the car look a little bit better. And for me, being in Canada, not a part that you can easily get, a little bit rare, and so it gives it a little bit of JDM feel for a left-hand drive car. So thanks for watching. I hope this helped you out a little bit. There's some good forums and guides out there, but I didn't find any good videos about how to install this thing or a good review. So we'll drive it around for a while, and if there's any complaints, I'll add it in at the end of the video. But for now, thanks for watching, finding my wings. We're doing lots more stuff to this car, so make sure to check back.